If you're looking for a moderately affordable full-width front bumper for your 2016 through 2023 Toyota Tacoma, this Barricade Reaper HD front bumper with LED fog lights is one to consider. Now this is good for both the off-road driver who wants a ton of clearance on the trail, whether it's for fire trails or more technical situations, and or the Tacoma owner who's sticking to the street who wants that tough pre-runner style appearance. Now it also includes utility with LED lighting if you want more than just protection out of a front bumper and you need some extra visibility at night for wherever you're headed. The bumper here has a full width design that covers the front and sides well and even includes some underbody coverage with the included skid plate. This also has filler plates for underneath the headlights to fill in the open space and add some protection to the lights, making for a clean appearance. Now while it does offer a good amount of coverage and protection to the front, it also is a little bit shorter, or at least compact when it comes to the height, again giving it that pre-runner style aesthetic, but also offering a lot of clearance for good approach angles off-road and room on the side for larger tires. Now in the center, this also includes a light bar mount with a mesh cover plate to complete the appearance if you choose not to add one on right away or at all. Now the outer wings, however, have provisions for the included 3-inch cube lights that consist of bright white high output LEDs that will outshine your factory fogs and make a big difference when it comes to visibility on the street and any off-road trail at night. This is made of a tough 5/32" steel plate construction, and while the build is shorter in height, it does come out from the front of the truck enough to take the brunt of any impact or hazards that this would come in contact with. Now to protect the steel, this also has a textured black powder coat finish on top, which is a 2-stage process with an epoxy pre-coat and then a powder coating to fight off rust, being great if you do live in a tougher climate. Now the lighting is also long-lasting with efficient LEDs, an aluminum housing for good heat dissipation, and a polycarbonate lens, as well as a full wiring harness for a plug-and-play design. The kit also comes with all of the necessary hardware and brackets that are also powder-coated steel, making for a straightforward swap when it comes time to install this. Now this is about $725, which is on the lower side of the spectrum when it comes to a full width front bumper. Now compared to other choices, while this will require some modification to your fenders, you're getting full front end protection with this bumper compared to a stubby choice, and the inclusion of LED lighting here is good if you want that added visibility without having to question the fitment. It's also a sleek, high clearance option that's not too bulky if you do want to keep a sharp look to the front end of your Tacoma. Install here is a 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter and should take about 2 hours or so to mount this up and get those lights wired in. However, at this point, I'm going to hand it over to one of our installers. They're going to show you a detailed breakdown on how to bolt this up to your Tacoma at home. So that wraps it up for me. Let's get into the install.
For this install, you're going to need a 3/8 ratchet, a 19mm wrench, a 16, 14, 13, 12, and a 10mm wrench as well, a 3/8 extension, a 10, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, and 18mm socket, along with the provided Allen keys, a panel tool, and a 4mm Allen. Today we're going to be installing a front bumper on a Tacoma, but first we're going to watch a quick uninstall video and we'll meet you here when you get back.
So the first step to our install is to take off our grill. You're going to need a 10mm socket for this, and you're also going to need a trim removal tool. So we're going to take out the bolts first. There are 2 up at the top. I'm going to use that 10mm socket to remove those. And then we can remove the clips on either side. So over on this side, on either side of the grill, we're gonna just have a pop clip. What I'm gonna do is just take the trim removal tool and pop that out of place. And we can do the same thing for the other side. So at this point, now that the hardware is out of our grill, we can just go ahead and remove it by pulling forward. And then what we can do next is start to disassemble our bumper. Our next step is to take off our lower splash shield. Now on either side, there's going to be 2 bolts behind the splash shield. I'm going to be removing those with a 10mm socket, and then the remaining bolts are going to be on the front side of the splash shield. This may be a little bit difficult to see. However, I'm going to use a 10mm socket and a small extension just to give myself some room to work with. So before you remove the front bolts, I would just repeat that process with the bolts that are behind the splash shield on the other side, and then we can take that same 10mm socket and remove the bolts on the front. So once all the bolts are removed, we can remove the lower splash shield. So our next step is to remove the first 2 bolts on the inside of our wheel well here. We're missing one down at the bottom here, as you can see, but we still need to remove this one up at the top. This is gonna allow us to pull our fender back so we can unclip our bumper on either side. So I'm gonna take a 10mm socket and remove this bolt up at the top. You should also use a 10mm socket for this one down at the bottom. Once that's removed, what we can do is start to peel the fender away from the bumper. It's gonna be held in by clips as well as adhesive. Now, if you are taking this off for the first time, it may be a little bit more difficult just to pull the fender away with the adhesive being there, but you can take a soft pry tool and you can just pry away from the bumper. If you need to, what you can do is just use that pry tool to unclip the bumper. As you can see, it's disconnected there. So then we can repeat that on the other side, and then we can unclip the middle part of our bumper. So now that we disconnected our fender, there's a little bit of hardware underneath that's connecting our front bumper cover to the crash bar as well as to our wheel well. Now there's a pop clip in the corner that we're going to disconnect using a trim removal tool. Next, we can remove that bolt that's holding the bumper cover to our crash bar with that same 10mm socket that we used before. Then we can repeat that on the other side and then unclip our bumper at the front. So before we remove the clips that are holding on the front of our bumper, we do need to disconnect this wiring harness here. We just have to press down on that tab and pull back. Just want to make sure that we're protecting all of our wiring harnesses before we pull the bumper away from the truck itself. Then we can grab a trim removal tool and start removing our clips. So next I'm going to take that trim removal tool, just like the one that we used on our grill, and we're just going to take off these clips that are holding on the front of our bumper cover. So now that all of our clips are fully removed at the front, what we can do is remove our front bumper cover. So our next step is to take off our crash bar here. We're gonna have 3 studs, and we're gonna take that hardware off with a 14mm socket. I'm also using my electric ratchet. Then we can take off the 3 on the other side and then pull off our crash bar. So we can remove our crash bar. Now mine's giving me a little bit of an issue just because it's been on for a long time. I'm gonna just take a dead blow and just tap it off.
Now that we have the front bumper apart, we are going to need to do one more relocation for the power steering cooler. So we're going to get rid of these 12mm bolts, pull them out of the way, and then we're going to relocate the whole thing a little bit backwards. And there's one more bolt on the side, so we're going to get to that and we're going to send the whole thing back. All right, the first one we're going to remove is on the passenger side. It's just behind the cooler right here, but you can get to it with an extension and your 12mm socket. Now moving on to the driver's side, again, it's a little hard to see, but it's just right behind the cooler. Going back in with our extension and our 12mm socket. Now through our passenger side wheel area, we have one more 12mm bolt holding on the lines for our power steering cooler. We're going to need to loosen this up and remove it so we can get a bracket on there to extend it a little bit. So using our 12mm socket, and set this aside. Now we're going to install the relocation bracket for our lines. Again, this is on the passenger side wheel area. This is the shortest bracket out of all of them for the relocation kit. So it's going to sit just like this on the frame, pointing towards the driver's side. This is going to be your frame side. That's going to be your driver's side. We're going to take the factory 12mm bolt, drop it in just like that, and then our new relocation hardware is going to go through the bracket on the lines just like that, and it's also going to get a nut on the bottom end, and we're going to tighten that all up. It's going to be kind of hard to see once we put this on, but that's what it's going to look like. I moved our inner splash guard out of the way just so we can see a little better. So now we're going to come through with our bracket and our 13mm bolt. I'm going to put that in. Lift up on the cooler line and slide that under. And now we can come on top with a flat washer and our 13mm nut. Now we can come through with our 13mm wrench on the bottom. And our 13mm socket on the top end. And we might need to make adjustments just to get this lined up, but now we can fit the bracket onto the frame. Now we can use our 12mm factory bolt and get it lined back up in the frame. Using our 12mm socket, we can tighten this down. All right, I have the power steering cooler propped up and pulled out just a little bit so that way we can see this a little bit better. Now we're working on the driver's side, which is going to be the longest bracket, the relocation bracket that you have in the kit. So we're going to attach this on the bottom using our 13mm hardware. We're going to come through with the bolt on the bottom end and our flat washer. Again with another flat washer on top and our locking nut. And now we can come back in and tighten this down with a 13mm wrench and a 13mm socket. You want to make this as straight as possible so everything lines up pretty nice. Once you get this bracket attached, you can now repeat for the other side. Again, I have this propped up just so we can get a little bit better view of the cooler, but this is the passenger side bracket, the shortest and the last bracket out of the relocation kit. So this is how we're going to mount it up with the bolt facing upwards and the nut tightened down the back using our 13mm socket. So this is what the whole setup should look like. Now we're going to attach it to the frame. Now we can fit our cooler back into position. Now we can get our cooler lined up and use our factory 12mm to get it bolted down. And we can use our 12mm wrench to tighten this down. Once you get that secure, you can now repeat for the other side. Moving on to the bumper, there's a couple things we're going to need to install here. We have our fog light assemblies, but first we're going to need to open up these wings and undo the shipping bolts and spread them apart so that way we can get it installed. All right, now we can undo the wing bolts. We're going to use a 16 millimeter on the top end and a 17 millimeter socket on the bottom end. Now we don't have to remove this completely, just loosen it up. And now you can repeat this step for the other side. Now we can secure our wings to the main part of the bumper using the provided hardware, bolt, flat washer, and our lock washer. Now I'll line that up. Now we can tighten this up using our 16 millimeter socket. Once you get these two tightened up, you can now repeat for the other side. Now we can tighten up our wing bolts again, using our 17 on the nut side and a 16 on the bolt side. Once you get these two tightened up, you can repeat for the other side. Now we can assemble our fog light and our bracket assembly. Slide the bracket in and insert our hardware with our lock washer. And get that started with the provided Allen key. Now we can get our fog light mounted up into the bracket. First, we're going to insert our bolt. Get that locked in. Holding that in place, we can now put our flat washer, our lock washer, and our nut. Now we can tighten this down using our 14 millimeter wrench. Once you have the fog light assembled and the bracket on and attached to the bumper, you can now repeat for the other side. Now we have our harness for the fog light assembly, so what we're going to be doing is connecting up our relay, mounting onto the body somewhere, and then we're also going to be taking our positive negative wire and attaching it to the battery. So we're going to pick a spot on here, we're going to go right here. Using our 10 millimeter socket, we're going to remove this bolt. Just to be a little cautious, we're going to remove our fuse first, and we'll set this off to the side. Using a 10 millimeter socket, we can now loosen up our terminals so we can attach our wires. Tighten this back down. Now we can repeat the same step with the negative using 10 millimeter socket. And tighten this back down. And now we can put our fuse back in. Now we're going to take our fog light wire leads and our connectors and route them through the engine bay as best as we can. We're just going to try to avoid any moving parts. Once you have the fog light leads routed where you need to, now you can secure it any way which you need just to get it out of the way of moving parts. Now we're going to be passing our button through the firewall, but first we're going to need to disconnect it right here. And we're going to pass this end through the firewall and then pick this up on the driver's side. Again, you can pick any spot on the firewall that you need to go to, but I'm going to pick this grommet down here. Now we can pull our wire through the driver's footwell. Now we can connect our button switch. Peel back the taping. And you can attach it anywhere you need to on the dash. We're just going to put ours right here. And you can also take any excess wire and zip tie it and tuck it out of the way of any moving parts. Now that we got the wiring all set up on our truck, one last step before I put our bumper on, we have our filler pieces on here. So we're just going to attach those and get our hardware in. And our lock nut on the bottom. And using the provided hardware, we can use an Allen key and a 10mm wrench. Once you get all three of those tightened up, you can now repeat for the other side. All right, now we can install our bumper support bracket onto our body. We're using our factory bolts. We can get this installed. Just a quick little note, this is marked passenger side and driver side, so we're working on the passenger side right now. Again, using the factory bolts. And using our 14mm socket, we can tighten this down. Once you get the support bracket on, you can now repeat for the other side. Now before we get the bumper on, this bumper does require some trimming of the fender. So we already have a pre-cut set. This is the general area where you want to trim it. This is what your stock one is going to look like. So there is a good amount that you're going to trim off, and you can mark this up and line it up any way you need to, but you can also use any trim tool or any way to cut it off there. And also you can cut it on the vehicle right here, or you can remove the entire fender flare and then cut it off vehicle. Now for getting the bumper on, you can use an extra set of hands, but I'm just going to get it on there by myself. Now I'm going to flip the brackets upright to get them lined up with each other, and I'm going to slide a bolt in just to hold it in place for me. Just set that there temporarily to hold us in place. Now that we have the bumper somewhat supported, now we can work on the rest of the bolts. Now we can install the rest of our hardware. We have bolt, flat washer, and our lock washer. Again with another flat washer and our nut. All right, now we can make any adjustments that we need to with the bumper. Once we're done that, we can come back and tighten up with a 16mm socket and a 16mm wrench. Again, once you've made any adjustments that you need to and you get these bolts tightened up, you can now repeat for the other side. Now we can install the factory grille. Now we can install our 2 grille screws. And we can tighten these down to our 10mm socket. Now we can install our factory clip, and they can repeat for the other side. Now we can connect up our fog light. And we can take any excess wire and we can zip tie it and secure it out of the way of any moving parts. Once you have your fog lights connected and your wire secured, you can now repeat for the other side. Now we can get our skid plate into position. I'm going to lift this up and get 1 bolt on the bottom just started. Now we can install the rest of our hardware. And now we can tighten this up using our 4mm Allen. Once you get these 2 tightened up, you can repeat for the other side. Now we can insert our long frame bolt. And come back through with our flat washer and our lock nut on the back end. And we can tighten this up with the 18mm socket on the bolt head side and a 19mm wrench on the nut side. Once you get that tightened up, you can repeat for the other side. That wraps up our install for Barricade Reaper HD front bumper with LED fog lights for 16 to 23 Tacoma. Just remember, for everything Tacoma related, keep it right here at ExtremeTerrain.com.